Hello and welcome to Ways of Virtue, a new Masonic podcast coming to you from Oklahoma. My name is Roland Morales and I am the current Worshipful Master of Lawton Lodge, number 183, and past master of Mount Scott Lodge, number 540 in Lawton, Oklahoma. I'm joined by my co-host, Brother Chris Smith, who is the Worshipful Master of Providence Lodge under dispensation here in Oklahoma. Welcome, Brother Chris. Tell us your thoughts on Providence Lodge being under dispensation. What's going to happen soon with that?
Hello, Worshipful Master. Good to be here today. Let's see. Coming up with Providence, we have Grand Lodge coming up. We spent the last 8 meetings under dispensation, so that'll be the end of that period. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get our charter, and right in December, we'll move into our first elections and go on from there. Moving on to good and great things.
Well, congratulations. I know you had a great part in that, and that was part of your efforts to get that lodge up and running. And we'll revisit that in just a minute about your experience with Providence Lodge and what type of lodge it is. So, brothers, friends, I want to welcome you to this podcast. And first, I'd like to recognize somebody that I promised in the past that I would always recognize. And this would not be possible. My journey through Masonry would not be possible without the support of my wonderful, loving wife, Jennifer. So, Jennifer, thank you for your support and all that you do to support me in this effort. I know Chris has a great family that supports him also, as do we all. And so it is, it's our efforts to become better men, better husbands and fathers. And this is certainly a vehicle that makes that possible. So the Ways of Virtue, why the Ways of Virtue as a name for a podcast? Well, brothers, if you are not using the opening charge every communication that you have, I really urge you to start using the opening charge because that basically lays down the groundworks of how we should act, what we should strive to do in learning in Masonry, in our interactions with each other. And those aren't just words. Those are absolutely words to live by. And so that's why we settled on that name for the name of this podcast. And so we hope that this podcast helps you develop your ways of virtue and live a virtuous life.
Hear, hear.
So the purpose of this Masonic podcast is to enhance your Masonic experience. And we certainly are confident that in the coming episodes and months and hopefully years that this podcast will enhance your experience. So, Brother Chris, do you have any experience with a Masonic podcast? Have you ever hosted one or been a guest of one?
I have not, sir. This is brand new for me, but I'm very excited in the endeavor. I think it's great. We always have such great conversations on, of course, esotericism and all the ins and outs of the practicalities of running the lodge and reality and all that. But we never record them. And, a lot of the times I find myself looking back, and sometimes it's kind of hard to remember all the things we covered when we had such great conversations. So this will be nice. This will be something new to try. I'm very excited.
Well, that's very well put. You're right. We do have excellent conversations, especially when we're in our travels to various lodges for whatever functions we are. Some wonderful fellowship and conversations, and you're absolutely right. If we recorded those, then we would have a way to go back and reflect on what we talked about and expound on those things.
Wisdom dwells with contemplation.
That is absolutely true. So we also want to enhance Masonic education. So it's going to be our desire. We're going to strive to provide some Masonic education for you, provide a way for you to look deeper into your Masonic journey and all the symbolism and the allegory that is present in our fraternity, in our degree work, and even just all of our ritual work, the opening and closing. Everything we do is so rich with symbolism. We hope that we'll provide a way for you to think about those things and spur your interest in pursuing that knowledge further. And we just want to increase Masonic outreach. We want to be able to reach more people and for more people to reach us. So we hope that you find value out of this and you reach out to us for ideas, questions, comments, any ideas you may have for future episodes. We certainly welcome those.
That's a great point. I think that'll lead into our next topic. A lot of people who might be thinking about Masonry could find this online and hear what we talk about before they have to knock on that door. That's a big commitment to come knock on the door.
It is. It is. And you saying that reminds me of a recent initiate we had. And you and I were involved in this ritual. And this new brother, before he knocked on the door, turned around to us and said, "Thank you." And it was wonderful that he said thank you, but in a way he kind of had that backwards. It's us that should have been thanking him for taking the time to think about the step he was about to take and then actually taking that step. So good insight, Brother Chris. So that leads us into the next topic, and it's the current state of Masonry. And we've all heard that there are declining numbers in Masonry, and there absolutely is. And I'm not going to go into actual numbers of Masons that we had 10 or 20 years ago compared to the numbers we have now, but I think we all would agree, wherever you're located, that there is a decline in Masonry today. And Brother Chris, you bring a unique perspective to that. You come to us from a different jurisdiction, so tell us about where you came from.
Yes, sir. When I joined, I had the fortuitous providence to meet a few guys who were starting a TO Lodge back near my home area in California. And it was a TO Lodge under dispensation. And I got to go through my initiation, passing and raising in that lodge, which was quite unique. California has a little bit different ritual standards than we do here in Oklahoma. Not to say whether it's better or worse, but they are a little bit different. And the emphasis for that lodge, that my mother lodge, was not in passing through the degrees as quickly as you could. I did learn the categorical lecture, by the next meeting, I was ready. But the emphasis was made on reflecting and learning all the things that you went through and saw, because the tendency is, to push through it and go, right to Master Mason. And then, maybe later we'll talk about some stuff and everything, but we don't really put an emphasis on the previous 2 degrees, or even really on the Master Mason, to be honest. And that kind of leads into the topic of, we may be declining in membership, but there is a distinct difference between the declining membership of Masonry and the quality of Masonry that you can find in some lodges nowadays. Obviously, though we are declining in numbers, the quality in Masonry, whether it's at a TO Lodge or even in a regular Blue Lodge, I feel, at least in my experience, I've only got a couple different states to draw from, but I did travel a little bit, and we got to meet a lot of new brothers. And it seems like, in general, the quality is vastly improving at an exponential rate. I'm a member of some online groups of some great Masons here in Texas and California, and then just general esoteric groups. And those bodies aren't hurting for members. They always end up finding the right members, or vice versa, the members find them. It's really only the big lodges that don't really offer much as far as the quality of Masonry, whether it's education or just any kind of experience for a new brother. And they're declining in membership, and they have such big lodges and overhead that's where it's detrimental to the craft there. But so I think it's important to make that distinguish between the declining membership versus the improving level of or quality of Masonry.
Very well put. Yes, there is a decline in Masonry, but that doesn't necessarily mean, there's a decline in membership, but that does not necessarily mean that there is a decline in Masonry, because You don't have to look very far to see or find somewhere that you could fit in if your wish is to further yourself in masonry or education, whatever. You
Nor
mentioned
is it
TO.
declining in importance to the community and all that. I mean,
Yes,
that also is despite lower numbers, that need is very much expanding, and we are more needed now than ever.
that's right. We always hear that we may be able to attribute the decline in membership to masonry losing its relevance, but you are right that um, an institution like this, a fraternity like this, is needed now more than ever. And you did mention that all lodges are good at something different, and some lodges may be outstanding at fundraising. Some lodges may be good at ritual, but not necessarily fundraising. So it's taking a look at your lodge, yourself, what it is your desire to do and become, and draw from other lodges in areas to improve in the areas that you want to. It's just following a business model that you follow a proven system, and then you multiply that system. You mentioned a TO lodge, though. Some viewers may not understand what a TO lodge or be familiar with that term. Explain what a TO lodge is.
Sure. Let me just put a disclaimer on the front that there is no governing body or anything like that in charge of. Well, let me just back up a minute. TO stands for traditional observance. And like I was saying, there is no general body that governs that. But there are groups, groups like the Masonic Restoration Foundation. If you Google that, you'll find a lot of resources. A lot of Oklahoma Masons were integral in that, like most worshipful past Grand Master Bob Davis. He was one of the first presidents. That if these groups came together, all with a single uniting cause, and that was, why do men join, and are we meeting that need? And the traditional observance, as implied in the name, it's nothing. There is nothing new about it. We like to say that George Washington didn't join his lodge to read the minutes, right, or to talk about the next spaghetti fundraiser. They obviously, when our forefathers, when they started this, had a different purpose in mind. And what was that purpose? Are we accomplishing or fulfilling that nowadays? And if we aren't, what can we do to change it? So there's a couple of things that are integral that we've kind of all commonly, gathered around. And again, these are just loose guidelines, like the Pirate Code. They're not rules. But things like doing the meetings or degrees by candlelight, enhancing the aspects of light and darkness. Also, along those lines, having incense. It's a powerful symbol in masonry, and it's an integral part of the sanctity and sacredness of the lodge space. And again, that stimulates the senses. Generally, there's some poetry read during a meeting. There is some moments or time for reflection or contemplation, sometimes guided, sometimes just music. And things like the business type side of the lodge should be referred to committees, and there should only be the necessary votes on the business. The discussion and all that should be generally kept to a minimum and kept to you can call it what you need, some sort of executive meeting or membership meeting at another time or before the meeting. But the importance is on establishing the sanctity of that lodge room space and reestablishing that sense of awe that I think we all wanted when we came into masonry. And then, of course, like every part, there to the inhale, there's always the exhale to contrast that solemnity in the lodge. Generally, an important part of a TO type lodge is what comes next, and that's the festive board or the meal. And that, I think, is the importance of that has really been lost over time. The original lodges that came together in 1717 came together on the Feast of St. John. And one of the purposes of that, when you actually look up their stated aims, was to reestablish that annual feast. The idea being that, that's one of the few places where we can all get together and spread those bonds of brotherly love and affection, that unite us. And, we all, at least the states that I've been to, we've all kind of slipped into that. Let's just have, a small, quiet meal beforehand in the dining area, which, if you notice, we all have dining areas. There's a reason for that. But, the meal is integral to it. But we kind of just, slip to a little quick sandwiches or some pizza or maybe some spaghetti or something. Maybe a prayer, but that's about it. And we do it before the meal, and then we go and do business. And, that kind of just, some people think that there might be a little bit more to that. And maybe we should explore other ways. Disclaimer again, what TO lodges do, especially in Oklahoma, we have to conform to the rules of the Grand Lodge of Oklahoma, the Constitution and Code. But nothing that we do is the right way, or this is how it should be. This is things that we do, like candles and incense. We're exploring these methods, and we're trying to find what's right for us to achieve those stated aims that Masonry was started with. And it really does have a different effect as far as, the meal. When we all sit together around, a candlelit or dimly lit, U-shaped table, like originated in the original craft lodges or operative lodges. And we share a meal together, the tradition of breaking bread, having drink. And we enjoy that levity to contrast that solemnity at the festive board. That's just as, if not more important. They go together like an inhale and exhale, but you have to have that coming together around a meal. And we choose to have you take that time to provide some education. We have a few traditional toasts that we do, like the Tyler's toast and stuff. But integral to the festive board is the education. There's usually a brother that'll come up, and you've got a TV, you can do a slideshow or watch a video and give. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be a research, paper level quality presentation. It just needs to be something from the heart or something that is beneficial in some way. We do that moment at Masonry sometimes in our regular Blue Lodges, and that's very important. It's just kind of taking that and expanding it a little.
Absolutely. Lawton Lodge number 183 used to use the Minute of Masonry. In fact, it was part of kind of a typed out format that Worshipful Master would always follow in regular communications. We've taken that a little step further and actually assigning an education piece to a particular brother, and sometimes suggesting a topic that the brother can present on, but also asking them to write a short paper, kind of like you do in Providence Lodge. And I think by writing a short paper on it really requires that brother before their presentation to put thought into it. You can assign somebody a Minute of Masonry in one meeting and then come back the next meeting and say, who had the Minute of Masonry? A brother may have forgot he had it, but be able to speak on something without preparing for it. But I like what we're doing in 183, having a brother tell you what topic they're going to present on, or helping them find a topic, and then asking them to prepare a short paper, and not necessarily to read during lodge, but so that paper could be added to a book.
Yes,
that's important. A book where anybody can go to that and pull a paper and respond to it, or just read on it and reflect on it a little bit more. And hopefully that spurs some discussion. Hey, brother, so-and-so, I liked what you said about this working tool. Have you ever thought about it in this way? Or any kind of discussion like that could be had. And so glad we're doing that, kind of stole that for, education piece, taking it a step further from you. But brothers seem to enjoy that. And it's also a way to get brothers other than the line officers who have language in a regular communication to be able to get up and participate
Yes.
rather than just voting on motions or, paying the bills, like you said. They're actually know, hey, I get to go to lodge tonight and I get to present something. Kind of goes back to when I was a building principal. I would always tell teachers, be the type of teacher that a student would want to come. If they were sick, they are not going to miss your class. It doesn't matter what's wrong with them, but they're not going to miss your class. They'll come just to come to your class, to school. And hopefully that's what we're making, or at least we're heading in that direction of making experience here in our local lodges. Like, I was reading, or I'm sorry, not reading, but I was listening to Whence Come You podcast, and they have a podcast entitled Waiting for the Masonic Charity. Not Masonic Charity Committee, but the Masonic Education Committee. And the podcast goes into great detail, the history, I believe it was in Illinois, of Masonic education and how important education or Masonry considers education. Even so much that Illinois created a fund that would support education. And so this grand jurisdiction saw education as such an important endeavor they were going to support outside of Masonry education. And this podcast made this statement: ritual begins the Mason, but reading, education, and reflection finishes him. So this depends on the man. So we are making efforts to increase education and provide that experience and provide that opportunity in our local lodges, but the end result depends on each individual brother. And so, Brother Chris, congratulations again on the formation of Providence Lodge. It seems I am a member of that lodge, and it's exciting to be a member of a charter member of a lodge, and one like Providence Lodge, where education and further reflection and contemplation is such a priority. So again, congratulations. In this podcast, the Grand Lodge of Illinois took proceedings in 1921, interestingly enough, from the Grand Master of Oklahoma, who at the time was James H. Patterson. And past Grand Master Patterson said this: the most crying need of Freemasonry at the present time, with the rapid increase in membership, is the fundamental need for education in the fundamental principles of Freemasonry. In 1921, the Grand Master of Oklahoma recognized the need for education to keep up with the increasing membership at that time. Brother Chris, I think that cannot be more true in our present state with the declining numbers in membership. And I think we do recognize that, because earlier we said there may be a decline in membership, but there absolutely is not a decline in Masonry, especially in some brothers. And so,
you're right. Providence Lodge is evidence of that, chartering a new lodge with those kind of aims.
That's right.
And my mother jurisdiction, California, they charter at least 2 to sometimes 5 lodges each year or every couple of years. And most of those are some sort of TO style leaning lodge.
Yep.
The idea of going back to a smaller lodge where, brotherhood matters and education talking. And I think I just want to, you brought up a good point, real good point. That was said in 1921. And that was the period where we were really surging in membership. And that was when we were building our big temples. Most of the Scottish Rite temples are from that era. Most of the big Grand Lodge buildings or local downtown lodges that were, of substantial quality were built in that time frame. With that new surge in membership and their dues and their money, and they did great things. Even the lodges that we're in today, like the lodge building that Providence and Lawton Lodge are in, that was made possible because of the great investment and building structures that preceded them. And I think it's important to note, though, that where we are today, what led us to the decline in membership, I would put forward that we did not heed his words, that it became, past master most works for Bob Davis talks about it. As soon as the Depression hit, then we kind of switched to that charity type thing. And we lost that education aspect. And even though we were expanding and making new buildings and erecting huge temples and great lodges, because we didn't do that, over time, we lost that generation. And that's how we came to here we are today. And I think with these new type of lodges, whether they're TO or whether they're just a normal lodge that came together, like I said, with the principles of the smaller lodge, more brotherhood, more reflection, more quality masonry, I think hopefully that's the right answer. Despite our declining membership, that's where we need to focus on so that when they do come, they come and they find what they were looking for in the first place.
Yes, I agree. I always feel like in the efforts we're making and the strides we're making in our lodge experience, every time I go home from a state of communication, I feel like we're getting closer and closer to where we actually want to be. And so we are turning into that what we want to be. And, in the 1920s, in the 1930s, a person probably didn't have to think very hard about who a Mason was. It probably wasn't very hard to know who a Mason was. And you bring up past Grand Master Robert G. Davis, and he points out that back in that era, it was not uncommon for there to be 3 generations of Masons in the same household, and that's definitely not the case today. Are you a Masonic legacy? Do you come from a line of Masons in your family?
I do not. My great grandfather apparently wasn't very talked about, but I've found that out through a little digging. I got into masonry through my wife, who was a Rainbow Girl, and she got her beginning from her grandfather, who was a Mason. So luckily, I came in through that route, or was exposed to it through that route, I would say.
Yeah, great story about how you came into masonry. I did not have a Mason in my family, at least that I know of. But I spent, like you did, some time in the military, and oftentimes when you spend time in the military and you get out, you miss that camaraderie that you have with men, and I did miss that. And I was fortunate enough to be leaving a college class one evening with a gentleman that I had a class with a couple times, and we were walking out to our cars, and I saw the bumper sticker on his car, "To be one, ask one," and I did ask him a little bit, and he invited me to the lodge for a dinner, and I came, and I found a lot of people that I just felt like provided a way for me to be part of something that was a little bit bigger than I was, kind of like the military seems to provide for a lot of people. And, that was my experience. But I know we all have different experiences. We're unique in Lawton, as a lot of people are that are in military communities. We have a lot of turnover here in our community because we are located so close to Fort Sill. And just give a little recognition to a brother that we have visiting us. His home lodge, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, it's West Point Lodge, and he is here at Fort Sill.
Number 877, ironically the number of my mother lodge after we got started.
You remember the number?
Yeah, I do.
But he is a great Mason, a great brother. He came here to Fort Sill because he's in the basic officers course. He looked for a lodge. He's been very active. And I'm glad that we are providing experience for him, that he didn't want to just come and say, hey, here I am. I'm going to school out here at Fort Sill. He's active in all the lodges, and all the lodges locally are providing a way for him to want to come after a full day of training and come and experience the lodge that we have. In fact, he has presented one of our papers. We wanted to make sure we captured his thoughts before he got away from us in his next duty station.
I think we should get him on here. It's one of our next episodes before he takes off too.
That's a very good idea. A very good idea. Well, Brother Chris, this was our pilot episode of the Ways of Virtue. And again, we hope that it is that you find value, brothers, as you stick with us, and friends, as you stick with us. I do believe, I'm confident that you'll find value out of this podcast, things that you can think about and you can reflect upon. And join us, won't you, the next time when we're joined by a brother and we're going to discuss regular lodge communication, irregular experience. So until then, my brethren, may the God of love and peace delight to dwell with in peace and bless you.
Here, here.